My name is Isabella, and I'm 28 years old. 6 months ago, I walked into a family meeting that would change everything I thought I knew about loyalty, love, and money. Picture this. You're sitting in your childhood dining room. The same scratched oak table where you did homework, where you celebrated birthdays and argued over chores. Now it's covered with legal documents and desperate faces. My father cleared his throat. His hands shook as he pushed a thick stack of papers toward me. Isabella, we need you to co-sign this loan. The number at the bottom made my stomach drop. $500,000. $500,000 that would tie my financial future to theirs forever. Just sign here, my stepmother Linda said. Her perfectly manicured finger tapped the signature line. It's what family does for each other. That moment felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. One signature could either save my family or destroy my future. I had no idea it would do both. The silence stretched between us. My younger half-brother Jake fidgeted in his chair. My stepsister Megan stared at her phone. My father's eyes pleaded with me across the table. Why me? I asked. The question hung heavy in the air. Because you have the best credit, Linda answered quickly, too quickly. Because you're successful. Because you understand what family means. But I was starting to understand something else entirely. This wasn't about family. This was about desperation disguised as love. You see, I'd spent my entire adult life proving myself to them. The daughter who got straight A's but never felt good enough. The one who worked 2 jobs through college while my siblings partied. The one who moved across the country for my career but still sent money home every month. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you about this life-changing decision, hit like and subscribe to hear more real stories about family loyalty and betrayal that might just change how you see your own relationships. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from my best friend Sarah. Remember what we talked about. Trust your gut. I looked around that room and saw something I'd never noticed before. The expensive furniture that didn't match their supposed financial crisis. The designer handbags. The luxury cars in the driveway. The vacation photos on social media from last month. Nothing added up. I need time to think about this, I said. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Time? Linda's voice rose. Isabella, we don't have time. The bank needs an answer by Friday. That was 3 days away. 3 days to decide whether to risk everything I'd worked for. My father finally spoke again. His voice was different now, colder. I thought I raised you better than this. I thought family meant something to you. Those words hit like a physical blow. The guilt settled in my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. But alongside the guilt, something else was growing. A small voice that whispered, "This isn't right." I stood up from that table without signing. The disappointment in their eyes burned into my memory. Linda muttered something about ungrateful children. Jake actually rolled his eyes at me. Only my youngest sister Emma looked conflicted. She was 16 and still lived with them. Her eyes met mine for just a moment before she looked away. Walking to my car that night, I felt like I was leaving more than just a house. I was leaving behind the version of myself that always said, yes. That always put their needs before my own well-being. But I had no idea that refusing to sign that paper would lead me down a path I never could have imagined. A path that would reveal secrets, test relationships, and ultimately show me what real family actually looks like. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I decided to find out the truth about their financial situation. What I discovered would shake me to my core and set in motion events that none of us saw coming. Have you ever Had a moment where saying no to family felt like betraying everything you were taught to believe? Drop a comment and let me know. Your story might help someone else going through the same struggle. Let me tell you how we got here. Because this story starts long before that family meeting. When I was 12, my father remarried Linda. She came with 2 children of her own. Megan was my age and Jake was 10. Suddenly, I went from being an only child to sharing everything. Linda made it clear from day one who belonged and who was just visiting. Isabella, you need to understand that this is our family now, she'd say. But her actions showed me I was more like a tenant than a daughter. My real mother had died when I was 8. Cancer took her slowly, painfully. Dad was lost in his grief for years. When Linda appeared, she seemed like salvation. She was organized, confident, and knew exactly what our broken family needed, or so I thought. Linda had this way of making generosity feel like manipulation. She'd buy me expensive gifts, then remind me about them during arguments. "After everything I've done for you," became her favorite phrase. Megan was Linda's golden child, beautiful, popular, and somehow never responsible for anything that went wrong. She could crash a car, and it would be the other driver's fault. She could fail a class, and it would be the teacher's problem. Jake was different, quieter, more thoughtful, but he learned early that agreeing with his mother was easier than thinking for himself. He became an expert at reading the room and saying, "Whatever kept the peace." Then there was Emma. Linda and my father had her when I was 16. She was supposed to be this beautiful symbol of their blended family. Instead, she became my responsibility. I changed her diapers, helped with homework, and tucked her in while Linda was out with friends. I loved Emma fiercely. She was the one, pure thing in our complicated family dynamic. But even that love became something Linda could weaponize against me. "If you really cared about Emma, you'd help us with this loan," she'd said at the meeting. My father changed after he married Linda. The man who used to read me bedtime stories became someone who deferred to his new wife on everything. He stopped defending me when Linda criticized my choices. He stopped asking about my dreams and started focusing on what I could provide for the family. Money became the language of love in our house. If Linda bought something expensive, it meant she loved us. If we couldn't afford something Emma wanted, it meant we didn't care enough. Success was measured in dollars, not happiness. I threw myself into achieving because achievement was the only way to earn approval. Straight A's, scholarships, internships, promotions. Each accomplishment felt like buying another day of acceptance. After college, I moved to Chicago for a financial analyst position. Finally, I could breathe. I could make decisions without Linda's commentary. I could date without her judgment. I could exist without constantly measuring myself against her expectations. But distance didn't break the patterns. They still called when they needed money. Car repairs, medical bills, school fees for Emma. I always said yes because saying no felt like abandoning my little sister. Linda had mastered the art of the guilt trip. "Your father works so hard," she'd say. "We're just trying to give Emma the opportunities you had." Except I hadn't been given opportunities. I'd earned every single one through sleepless nights and sacrifice. The irony was devastating. The more successful I became, the more they expected from me. My raises weren't celebrations of my hard work. They were opportunities for larger requests. Last year, I started noticing things. Expensive purchases that didn't match their supposed struggles. Linda's designer clothes, Dad's new golf clubs, Megan's luxury apartment that I apparently helped subsidize. I hired a private investigator, not because I wanted to catch them in lies, but because I needed to understand what I was really dealing with. What I learned broke my heart and opened my eyes simultaneously. They weren't struggling. They were spending recklessly and using my guilt to fund their lifestyle. Every sob story had been carefully crafted. Every emergency had been manufactured. The loan they wanted me to co-sign? It wasn't for medical bills or education. It was to cover gambling debts and credit card payments from their spending sprees. Do you know what it feels like to realize that people you die for see you as nothing more than a bank account? Share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. The week after I refused to sign, the real manipulation began. Linda started small. Passive-aggressive text messages about family loyalty. Photos of Emma looking sad, with captions about how disappointed she was that her big sister didn't want to help. But I was done being manipulated. I decided to fight back with the truth. I reached out to my Aunt Margaret, my mother's sister. We hadn't spoken much since Linda entered the picture, but she'd always been kind to me. Over coffee, I told her everything. The loan request, the investigation, what I'd discovered about their finances. Margaret's face went pale. Isabella, there's something you need to know. She told me about a trust fund. Money my mother had left for me that was supposed to be accessible when I turned 18. My father and Linda had been managing it, supposedly, saving it for my future. They cleaned it out years ago, Margaret said quietly. I tried to stop them, but legally they had control until you were 25. My mother's final gift to me, gone. Used to fund their lifestyle while I worked multiple jobs and took out student loans. The betrayal cut deeper than anything they'd done before. But Margaret had more information. She'd been quietly investigating them too, worried about Emma's future. She had bank statements, credit reports, and documentation of their spending patterns. They're not just reckless, she said. They're criminals, tax evasion, insurance fraud, identity theft using your information. My hands shook as I read through the documents. They'd opened credit cards in my name when I was in college. Small. Amounts always paid off, so I never noticed. But the accounts existed, and they could destroy my credit if they wanted to. The trap was more elaborate than I'd imagined. They hadn't just been using me emotionally. They'd been systematically setting up ways to use me financially for years. That night, I called my mentor from work, Catherine Wells. She was a senior, partner who'd taken me under her wing when I was struggling to navigate corporate politics. Isabella, she said after I explained everything, you're not just dealing with family drama. You're dealing with financial abuse and possibly federal crimes. Catherine connected me with a lawyer who specialized in family financial crimes. James Morrison was expensive, but Catherine insisted on paying for the consultation. This is worse than you think, James told me after reviewing the documents. But you're not helpless. In fact, you have more power than they realize. He explained that the bank they were trying to get the loan from was actually owned by a larger financial group. A group where Catherine had connections. A group that was very interested in the kind of fraud documentation I now possessed. There's something else, James said. The bank is for sale. The parent company wants to divest, and they're looking for qualified buyers. I laughed. I can't buy a bank. Not alone, he said. But with the right investors and your clean record in finance, you could be part of a purchasing group. It sounded impossible. But Catherine was intrigued when I told her about it. She had wealthy contacts who were always looking for good investment opportunities. Meanwhile, the pressure from my family intensified. Dad started calling daily. Linda showed up at my apartment unannounced. Even Megan reached out, pretending to care about our relationship while fishing for information about my decision. The breaking point came when they involved Emma. My 16-year-old sister called me crying one night. Isabella, they're saying you hate us now, that you don't want to be part of the family anymore. Emma, that's not true, I said. I love you. I love Dad, but I can't enable destructive behavior anymore. They said if you don't help, we might lose the house. I'm scared. My heart broke for her. She was innocent in all of this, being used as a weapon against me. But I also knew that saving them from consequences wouldn't help anyone, especially not Emma. Emma, I need you to know something. No matter what happens, you'll always be my sister. And I'll always make sure you're okay. That conversation gave me clarity. I wasn't just fighting for my own financial future. I was fighting for Emma's chance to grow up in a family that didn't use love as currency. If you've ever felt trapped between protecting yourself and protecting someone you love, you know how impossible those choices feel. Let me know in the comments how you navigated that situation. 3 months later, everything came to a head in the most unexpected way possible. I was sitting in a boardroom, signing papers to become part owner of Community Trust Bank, the same bank where my family had applied for their loan. The irony wasn't lost on me. The daughter they'd tried to manipulate into financial servitude was now in a position to make decisions about their financial future. Catherine and I had assembled a group of investors who were interested in acquiring the bank. My clean record, combined with my analytics expertise, made me an attractive partner. The previous owners wanted a quick sale, and we had the capital. "Congratulations, Isabella," said David Chen, our lead investor. "You're now a bank owner." I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt terrified. Because I knew what was coming. The very next day, I got the call I'd been dreading. It was Linda, and she was furious. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed into the phone. "The bank called. They said our loan application was being reviewed by new ownership." "I didn't do anything to your loan application," I said calmly. "But I am part of the new ownership group." The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, "You bought the bank? You bought the bank to spite us?" "I bought the bank because it was a good investment opportunity. Your loan application is being handled through normal channels." But that wasn't entirely true. I had insisted on reviewing any applications connected to my family. Not to sabotage them, but to understand exactly what they were asking for. The loan documents told a story of lies, inflated income, hidden debts, and assets that didn't exist. They weren't just asking me to cosign, they were asking me to be part of bank fraud. That evening, they showed up at my apartment, all of them. Dad, Linda, Megan, Jake, and Emma. The confrontation I'd been avoiding for months was finally happening. "Isabella, we need to talk," Dad said. His voice was different, desperate in a way I'd never heard before. I let them in, but I was prepared. James had coached me on this conversation. I had recording equipment running and a security company on speed dial. Linda went on the attack immediately. "You think you're so much better than us now? You think owning part of a bank makes you important?" "I think being honest makes me important," I replied. Something this family seems to have forgotten. I spread the documents on my coffee table. Bank statements, credit reports, evidence of their spending and debts, evidence of what they'd done with my mother's trust fund. "This ends now," I said. "The lies, the manipulation, the financial abuse. All of it ends now." Dad's face crumpled when he saw the trust fund documentation. "Isabella, I can explain. Dad, you stole from me. You stole from your dead wife's daughter to fund vacations and shopping sprees." Emma was crying quietly in the corner. She was the only one who looked genuinely shocked by the revelations. "We were going to pay it back," Linda said. "We were going to make everything right." "With a loan you obtained through fraud? A loan you wanted me to guarantee with my future?" Megan finally spoke up. "So what now? You're going to destroy?" The family because you're mad about money? I'm not destroying anything, I said. I'm protecting what's left of this family by refusing to enable criminal behavior. The conversation went on for hours. Accusations flew. Linda called me ungrateful. Megan said I was jealous. Jake remained silent, looking increasingly uncomfortable. But Dad surprised me. Near the end of the night, he broke down completely. I don't know how it got this bad, he said. I loved your mother so much. When she died, I was lost. Linda seemed to know how to handle everything. I stopped paying attention. I stopped being a father. It was the first honest thing he'd said in years. Dad, it's not too late to change, I told him, but the lying has to stop. The financial abuse has to stop, and you need to get help. As they left that night, Emma hugged me tight. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know about any of this. I know, sweetheart, and it's not your fault. That hug gave me hope. Maybe something good could come from all this pain. Have you ever had to choose between family peace and doing what's right? Sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most important changes. Share your experience in the comments. The immediate aftermath was brutal. Linda launched a social media campaign against me, telling anyone who would listen that I'd betrayed my own family for money. Extended relatives who barely knew the situation took sides based on her version of events. The loan application was denied, of course, not because of my influence, but because it was fraudulent. The bank had a legal obligation to report the attempted fraud to authorities. Dad and Linda faced criminal charges: tax evasion, insurance fraud, and identity theft. The reality of their situation finally hit them when FBI agents showed up at their door. But the most important thing happened 3 weeks after that confrontation. Emma called me from school. Isabella, can I come live with you? Child Protective Services had gotten involved when the criminal charges came to light. Emma needed a safe place to stay while everything got sorted out. Linda's sister was willing to take her, but Emma chose me. I want to live with someone who tells the truth, she said. Getting custody of Emma wasn't easy. Court hearings, home inspections, and countless meetings with social workers. But I had something most people don't: the resources to fight for what was right. 6 months later, Emma moved into my spare bedroom. Watching her blossom in an environment without manipulation was incredible. She started getting better grades. She made friends. She laughed again. I didn't realize how tense I was all the time, she told me one night while we were making dinner together. I was always waiting for the next crisis, the next argument about money. Meanwhile, the bank was thriving under new management. We implemented ethical lending practices and financial education programs. I found myself passionate about preventing the kind of financial abuse I'd experienced. Dad served 8 months in minimum security prison. The experience seemed to wake him up in ways I hadn't seen since before my mother's death. He started attending therapy and addiction counseling. Yes, addiction. Because spending money recklessly was how he'd been self-medicating his grief for years. When he got out, he asked to see me. We met at a coffee shop near the prison. He looked older, but cleaner somehow. Like he'd finally stopped running from himself. Isabella, I owe you more than an apology, he said. I owe you a father. I haven't been one in years. Dad, I'm willing to work on our relationship, but it has to be honest this time. No secrets, no manipulation, no using Emma or anyone else to get what you want. I understand, and I want you to know what you did, stopping me from dragging you down with us. It saved me. I didn't see it then, but you saved all of us. Linda was a different story. She served 2 years and came out angrier than ever. She blamed me for everything that had happened. She convinced Megan and Jake that I was the villain in their family story. I mourned that relationship for a while, but I realized something important. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. You can only save yourself and protect the people who matter most. A year later, Emma started her senior year of high school. She was thriving academically and had been accepted to several colleges with full scholarships. No student loans needed, because her big sister had learned the importance of financial planning. "What do you want to study?" I asked her one day. "Psychology," she said. "I want to understand why families hurt each other, and maybe help other families heal." I couldn't have been prouder. Dad and I had dinner once a month now. He was working at a hardware store and living in a small apartment. He was paying back what he could of the money he'd taken, though it would take years to make it right. But the relationship was real now. No manipulation, no hidden agendas. Just a father trying to make amends, and a daughter learning to forgive. Margaret became a regular part of our lives, too. She helped with Emma and shared stories about my mother that I'd never heard. I learned that my mom had been a fighter, too. Someone who stood up for what was right even when it was difficult. "She would be proud of you," Margaret told me. "She always said you had her strength." The bank continued to grow. We'd helped dozens of families avoid predatory lending. We'd created financial education programs for teenagers. We'd become the kind of bank that actually served the community instead of exploiting it. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after cutting toxic people out of it? How did you find the strength to start over? Your story might inspire someone who needs to hear it. Today, 2 years later, I'm sitting in my office overlooking downtown Chicago. Emma is starting her sophomore year at Northwestern University, studying psychology and pre-law. She wants to advocate for children in family court situations. The girl who used to hide during family arguments about money is now confident enough to challenge professors and lead study groups. She calls me every Sunday to tell me about her week, her friends, her dreams for the future. "You know what's weird?" she said last week. "I used to think love meant saying yes to everything. Now I realize love sometimes means saying no." That wisdom from an 18-year-old stopped me in my tracks. She understood something it took me 28 years to learn. Dad and I have built something new together. Not the relationship we had before Mom died, but something honest and adult. He's been sober from spending addiction for 18 months now. He's paying me back $50 a month from the trust fund money. Not because I demanded it, but because he needs to do it for his own healing. Last month, he met someone new, a widow named Patricia who lost her husband to cancer 5 years ago. She's nothing like Linda. She's kind, genuine, and has her own money. More importantly, she makes Dad laugh again. "I want you to meet her," he told me. "But only if you're ready, and only if you want to." I met Patricia last weekend. She was nervous, clearly aware of our family's complicated history. But she was also warm and funny. She asked thoughtful questions about my work and told embarrassing stories about Dad that made me see him as human again. "I know I have to earn your trust," she told me privately. "Jim's told me about the mistakes he made. I just want you to know I'm not looking for anything from you except maybe friendship. Someday." It was the kind of honesty I'd been craving my whole life. The bank now has 3 locations, and we're planning a 4th. We've helped over 200 families avoid financial scams and predatory lending. We've provided financial education to thousands of teenagers, teaching them what I wish I'd known at their age. But the most rewarding part of my job is the family financial counseling program we started. Families dealing with money conflicts can come in for mediated conversations with trained counselors. "Money is never really about money," our lead counselor always says. "It's about power, control, love, fear, and worth." I think about Linda sometimes. Megan posts photos on social media occasionally. Linda looks older, harder, Megan is working, retail and living paycheck to paycheck, still waiting for someone else to solve her problems. Jake surprised me 6 months ago by reaching out. He's in community college now, studying accounting. He wants to understand money so he never makes his mother's mistakes. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up during that meeting," he told me. I knew. It was wrong, but I was scared. "You were 18, Jake, and you were raised to believe that keeping the peace was more important than telling the truth." We meet for coffee once a month now, too. He's working hard to unlearn the patterns Linda taught him. It's not easy, but he's trying. The most important lesson I've learned through all of this is that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choice. Every day we choose who to trust, who to support, who to protect. Real family doesn't manipulate. Real family doesn't use guilt as currency. Real family celebrates your success instead of trying to profit from it. I chose Emma. I chose Dad when he was ready to be honest. I chose Jake when he was ready to grow. I chose Patricia when she showed me genuine care. And I chose to stop choosing people who only wanted me for what I could provide. If you're watching this and struggling with family financial abuse or manipulation, please know that it's not your fault. You don't owe anyone your financial future just because you share DNA. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. Protecting yourself isn't betrayal. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable destructive behavior. Like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe if you want to hear more real stories about family, money, and finding your strength. And please share in the comments. What would you have done in that family meeting? Have you ever had to choose between family pressure and your own well-being? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Remember, you are worthy of relationships based on love, not need. You deserve family who celebrates your success, not people who see you as a solution to their problems. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you write yours.